sometimes enhanced meditation. If you guys want to do some enhanced meditation, bow your eyes, close your head, and close your heads.
Bow your eyes and close your head.
Close your eyes and bow your head. You can go ahead and take a sleep. No, I've been thinking a little bit about doing some more, making it even more interactive. Just because I notice when you read the Bible, as when I read the Bible, I see a lot of times that people are asking questions of Jesus. Hey, what's the greatest commandment? And then Jesus is responding. I am so sorry, I don't do English well. So for those people that have learned proper grammar, that's not going to be me.
In other words, English is your second language?
English, it is. Okay, a little bit of biography, a little about me. I was born in Zeist, Netherlands, and my dad was in the Air Force, and I had my babysitter that had me, was taking care of me, and actually Dutch. So I like to learn the words, Dutch words for water and everything before I learned English. So English is technically my second language, although I had like an infant's knowledge of Dutch. So it's like...
So you can pronounce Van Gogh correctly, right?
No, I cannot, because essentially I got Americanized very quickly. But there you go. So my vocab evolved like 3 words, which are like milk and water and pick me up or something. I don't know. Anyway, so that's boring. All right. So what I wanted to do is say, hey, and I've done something similar before when I've done Bible studies where I've said, hey, what are the questions? What are anything going on? You guys have questions about? You're like, hey, do you want to fire them out before we start the sermon? And just open it up. Anything? Discussions you have? Questions you have? Anything? All right. Well, I figure I'd give the time, but I'd give the time in the front as opposed to in the back. Because then when we do the sermon, then there might be a point where we're like, hey, remember we asked this before? This is God showing the answer. All right, well, we are going to continue on then into going through the former prophets. We're now in the Judges, the book of Judges. One of the problems that we have when looking at the book of Judges in the Bible is the title. So the title makes us look at the wrong things, focus on the wrong things in the book of Judges. What do you think the title makes us focus on? The Judges. So the book of Judges is not about the judges, though it tells the story of Judges. Because the book of Judges covers about 400 years of history. So as a book, the judges are not the main character because they aren't in the whole thing. Does that kind of make sense? What is the one character that's in the beginning of Judges and the end of Judges? God. The main character of the book of Judges is God. Even the people live and die and live and die and live and die. They're kind of secondary. So it kind of shows the story of, if we use the people, the bride, if you will, of God, and we see how faithless they are. But we see God's character going through. Now, one of the other challenges we have when we see the book of Judges is we see that being almost faithful and being faithful are 2 different things. Right? Almost faithful and totally faithful is 2 different things. So what we start seeing is as the telling of the story happens, we start seeing, oh, this is where the seeds of the problem later on are going to come in. So that's kind of, and what we're going to see with the Judges, the other reason it's not about the Judges, because if it was about the Judges, it would be about all these great Jewish generals. But the stories aren't necessarily about great Jewish generals. As you go on through there, they get progressively worse. The Jewish heroes start looking more and more like the Canaanite heroes. So what starts in the beginning with a little bit of sin, by the end is all full-grown tree of sin. And that's kind of what has been promised. If you don't stay true to Yahweh, things get bad, right? Even though you have a different name on the marquee, you're still serving the other gods in the background. So that's what we have. If you're wondering about timeline, where we're at, we're about somewhere around 1200-ish BC or almost 1400 BC. The reason we have 2 different timelines is because we have 2 different sets of numbers. We have a Greek set of numbers and a Hebrew set of numbers. So the Masoretic text count says this happened a certain period of time. That's the Hebrew version. And the Greek version says another set of times. Yes.
Can you shut that light up when I do the
Piano
the
light.
layout?
I forgot to turn it
The
off.
piano light. I can't.
Thank you, I appreciate that. Sorry to interrupt.
What if I do this? Then it would have been a halo.
We'll start confessing things.
That would have been.
That's really great.
Yes.
Thanks.
Where were you last Sunday? I wasn't here. I'm sorry. It took me a long time to get up, and then it was too late. Confess. All right. So there's a difference. There's a couple different numbers about some of these links. That's not a problem with the Bible. And it's not necessarily that the Hebrew numbers are right, the Greek numbers are right. I actually think the older numbers are right. I think that those are the right numbers. I think the longer date is right for other reasons because it lines up with other genealogies and other stuff. But part of the reason is because sometimes the numbers are used allegorically. Like if I say, man, I thought I was in shape and I went to the gym and I looked around and realized I was not that in shape and I feel 1,000 years old. Am I literally 1,000 years old? But did you get what I was saying? So I used the figurative, the allegorical number to illustrate just how old I felt. So some of these are like that. Some of those numbers are allegorical. And really there's a different set. So a lot of the Hebrew stuff is affected by the, hey Ricky, turn the other mics off and then turn this one down just a skosh because we got a little ring in the background.
Toby's in there.
Oh, Toby? Hi, Toby. And then the other thing that we have is we have, in the Hebrew sense, they would use kind of base 60 because it's like Babylonian. So kind of like our clock is base 60. And then the Romans weren't. So some of the numbers don't line up. So like if I said like 400 years would mean something, but they'd say like 256 years. And you're like, 256 years? That's 60 times or whatever, however it works. That's not 60 times anything. That's base 2. I went binary for a second, sorry. Anyway, that's it. I don't know if it's interesting to you. What I will tell you this, what is really interesting about it is that this period lines up archaeologically with what we dig in the sand. So if you look in that period of time, this 1200 to 1400 period, it's part of what's called the Bronze Age collapse or the Bronze Age apocalypse. Or it's the time of the world where the world just goes crazy. Any of you like Hunger Games? But like the book Hunger Games, you see how that's kind of like the end of the world, kind of everything's all dystopian. What is described in Judges is very dystopian. It's very much like, oh, imagine if all the empires in the world collapsed, what would you have? Well, you had tribes like hiding in caves, hiding from roaming, and that's exactly what we have in Judges. So it's really interesting. And for me, as a history geek and one who loves the Bible, I think it's amazing that we have books, we have writings from the Bronze Age and from the Iron Age that reflect what was happening in the Bronze Age and the Iron Age. I think that's kind of cool. As a matter of fact, as far as Bronze Age writing and Iron Age writing, that we still have it, and we have it because there's been a group of people faithful to that Bronze Age, Iron Age that moved through the classical period, that moved through the time of the Romans, that stay loyal and faithful all the way up to today. That's pretty doggone amazing. That's one of the reasons why the Bible is the most amazing book in history, the most amazing feat of humanity. Even if you didn't believe in God, historically there is nothing like it. There's nothing comparable. You could go, well, what about the Quran? The Quran was written by one man. Quran was one guy, one time, and he gathers together stuff. It's not the same. It's not comparable. Even this book, the book of Judges, the guy who writes the book of Judges is not there to be witnessing all 400 years. What he does is he takes primary accounts from these judges and weaves them together to tell the story. All right. Now, that being said, the time period that we're covering, the first chapter of Judges, overlaps the last half of Joshua. So it's not quite like we finished Joshua, and we go to Judges. There's some overlap, and there's some poetic overlap. So they kind of retell the story. It's kind of like if you pick up a movie, and it does the second movie, and they flash back through the first movie to catch you up. That's what they're going to do. So do you remember the story of Caleb and Joshua? Caleb's like, I can take the hardest place, and they take the hill and do that. They're going to retell that story again. So where is this at? You're going to say, and here's the thing, you're going to look at Judges, you're going to see Joshua dying twice. Why does Joshua die twice? Well, because the first time, he's dead both times. But what it does is it kind of like, it's Joshua starts out right here. After the death of Joshua, the Israelites asked the Lord which tribe should go first to attack the Canaanites, and the Lord answered, Judah, I've given them victory over the land. So Judah gets the land. How much land does he get? Judah actually is supposed to get all of the land. Of the 12 tribes, Judah is the one that's in charge. Judah. What tribe is Jesus of? Judah. What tribe is David of? Judah. What tribe is Solomon of? Solomon?
I beg your pardon, I was thinking Saul.
Oh yeah, you're right. Yeah. You saw me throw it? No, it was Solomon. Solomon was Judah. The United Kingdom is under Judah, so that's the idea. Not the United Kingdom, not that one, the other in the Bible. So, we know what we're going to do is now we're going to back up to where, because Joshua gathered together the people, so to tell the story again. Let my people go! Wilderness, 40 years, right? Joshua fits the battle of Jericho, walls come tumbling down. Joshua fights for 5 years. They knock out all the major armies. Right? They knock them all down. Then Joshua gathers everybody up and says, okay, you guys, your ministry is this area. You guys, your ministry is that area. You guys, your ministry is over that area. Then he sits down. For 30 years, people go back to take care of their ministry. This is when that happens. I know it says he's dead. He's not dead. It's flashing back to from that point. Because the idea is like, okay, Joshua's dead. Who's supposed to be in charge? Judah's supposed to be in charge. That's why they're doing it. And now they retell. And they kind of did it before when Joshua, because when they were gathering up, they said, who gets this land? Caleb came up and said, hey, I want to get the hardest land. And Joshua said, yes. And then for a second, it chases him. And he goes, and then he went to the hardest land. He killed this guy and this guy. And then he said, whoever take that city can have my daughter. And they're like, yeah, woo. And then his nephew, all right, anyway, gets married to his daughter. That's okay. We won't worry about that. Don't look too closely there. And they just keep moving, right? That's the sense of it. Well, the time for Caleb to take the land and conquer and then give it to his daughter and they move on, that is decades worth of time. But we read it as 3 verses, so we think so this is why what we're doing is we're going back to when Judah had their space and they start taking control of their area. The men of Judah said to the relatives of the tribe of Simeon, come with us and fight in the Canaanites living in the territory allotted to us, and then we'll help you conquer your territory. The men of Simeon went with Judah. Now, one of the things that you can look at was why doesn't Judah take, well, because do you remember when they gave the land, Simeon didn't have his own space. Simeon had spaces within Judah. So Judah is doing its job as the leader of the nation, the national army, if you will, and saying, hey, you guys send some of your boys to come with us, and we'll continue clearing out the people in our area. So Judah is doing the right thing. So is Simeon doing the right thing? Yes, they're responding to Judah's leadership. Is Judah doing the right thing? Yes, they're driving out the giants. They're driving out there. Everybody's doing right. Right now, everything looks like it's going the way Joshua wants it to go. The churches are doing what they're supposed to do. They've got their allotted spaces. They're doing ministry in those spaces. Everything's going great. When the men of Judah attacked, the Lord gave them victory over the Canaanites and the Perizzites, and they killed 1,000 enemy warriors at the town of Bezek. Now, just so we know, the idea that God's giving them victory means that they're on which side? They're on the right side. They're doing the right things. Everything feels good, doesn't it? We're like, yay, good guy's winning. While at Bezek, where Bezek is, we're not sure. There's a couple leading ideas of where Bezek is. It's probably one of those hill towns near kind of the hills of Jerusalem, kind of in that area, over by the Dead Sea. While at Bezek, they encountered King Adonai Bezek. That word means Lord Bezek. Adonai means Lord. Lord Bezek, so the town's named after him. So, it seems like it's more than just he's the king of the town. In a lot of these other places where the town is named after him, people are worshiping that deity. So I think you might want to see him more as like the God King. Kind of like how sometimes people worship the Pharaoh. Or with the Roman Empire, they worship the Emperor of Rome. So that's who we see with Adonai Bezek. He fought against them, and the Canaanites and the Perizzites were defeated. Adonai Bezek escaped, and the Israelites soon captured him, and they cut off his thumb and his big toe. Fantastic! Now here's a problem, or here's a challenge. When we look at the narrative, we sometimes go, well, we're seeing what's described, but is it what they should have done? Now, I have a used car. I have a very old used car. I've driven used cars my whole life. And sometimes that means that on the dashboard, I use this analogy a lot, I'll get a light that'll come on my dashboard, and I don't know if this is the change oil light or the engine's going to explode light. You know that? That's what this is. In the narrative, this is a light. We have not seen God say, hey, go in there and make sure you're cutting off toes. I want some toes. Right? You're like, well, that's kind of weird. Now, the one thing we have seen is foreskins, which is weirder. But there's a different message there. As a matter of fact, if it said, and they cut off his foreskin, if they circumcised him, that would be a better outcome. Because you would know what that would mean. The circumcision was a sign of being part of the community of Yahweh. It would mean that they captured the king and said, we're going to make you one of us. You're going to worship the right God. That's good, right? That would be good. But that's not what he did. So this is where you're like, well, why did he cut off his thumbs? Now, I'll tell you why. The reason you cut off your thumbs and your big toe sounds weird. Big toe affects your balance. It also affects whether or not you can wear sandals or armor. Your thumb makes it so you can't hold a sword. Or even drawing back a bow and arrow is hard. So it essentially pacifies the person. It's like lopping off their hands or feet.
You would be able to hold though.
Yeah. No, absolutely. And here's where we see, this is where the next clue that something's wrong is here. This is a dashboard light. Adonai Bezek said, the guy that gets his thumbs and his fit toe, he goes, I once had 70 kings. Again, symbolic number. It means a buttload. Doesn't necessarily mean literal. It means a lot of, how many? A bunch of kings. I had a bunch of kings. They had their thumbs and big toes cut off eating scraps under my table. In other words, they survived it showed how powerful I was. He goes, now God has paid me back to what I did to them. So he sees it as eye for eye justice. They took him to Jerusalem and he eventually dies there. Now here's the deal. We can look at this and go, oh, that's probably okay. Except God never told him. What have they done to kings up to this point when they captured him? Killed them because they were gods representing some other god. So in rebellion, they killed them so nobody would confuse that god. This guy, they don't do it. And as a matter of fact, the other part of the story that's very concerning is they're doing what he did. So it's that little sign of, uh-oh, it's a problem. Flash forward, very end of the book, spoiler alert. What do they do with Samson? Is they essentially cripple him and they celebrate. Look how we're powerful over the God of Yahweh, put him in the temple. It's the same kind of stuff. It's Canaanite stuff. It is not Yahweh stuff. Then the men of Judah attacked Jerusalem and captured it, killing all the people and setting the city on fire. Then they went down to the Canaanites living in the hill country, in the Negev and western foothills. Now, I'm going to go up here because I love maps. The lower two tribes right here. This is where David's going to come from after the civil war that happens and the top 10 tribes run away. Benjamin, Simeon, Judah, these are the tribes that stay with David's descendants. As a matter of fact, and after all of the things happen, they come back, Judah becomes Judea. And this is like the part of Israel. Now, that's not where Jesus grows up in old Israel, but we're not dealing with that right now. We're just looking at this. Does that make sense? So they went into Benjamin's territory, and they kicked the snot out of the biggest city there, Jerusalem. Now, we've already heard once about the Benjamites and Jerusalem, and we were told all about the Benjamins, baby. The Benjamites do not take over Jerusalem. The reason they don't take over Jerusalem is because they don't want to. Too hard. So this is this place where we're like, well, wait a second. So Judah came in that space, and they made it so that Benjamin just would have had to walk into Jerusalem and take over? Yes. So we're like, well, why didn't they? That's a good question. So essentially what happens is Jerusalem, or Judah in force, goes up, knocks down the gates of Jerusalem, burns down all the stuff, and then leaves. And then Benjamin was supposed to come in and fill the city, but they don't. Instead, they let the Jebusites come back in and build up. Not to be political, but it would be very much like D.C. D.C. had a lot of crime in it, so they bring in the National Guard, they bring in federal troops, they come in, and they settle the crime down. That's great. That's fantastic. Then the National Guard goes away. Somebody has to stand in the vacuum, right? Same thing in Chicago. Chicago, bad, crazy. Let's say the federal government does come in, settle things down. That's great and wonderful. When the federal troops leave, local forces have to stand up and hold the city, or else it's going to just go bad again. And that's what happens here. So Judah marched in against the Canaanites in Hebron, formerly called Kirith Arba, defeating the forces of Shisha and Ahaman and Tema. Those are the three giants. Who is this? This is Caleb. This is the story of Caleb. Caleb went in. Now again, formerly called Kirith Holy Arba, named after Arba. Arba is the giant that it says, that they worship. So what did they do? Well, when they conquered it, they renamed it. They came in, the place was called Devil Town. They kicked down the door. They said it's no longer called Devil Town. And they took the devil idol and they burned it. And they destroyed it. And they said, okay, we're now called Hebrew Town. Right? That's different, right? That's what we see. So again, we see them doing what they're supposed to do. In the narrative, it's showing all the right signs. They went in to fight against the town of Debir. Debir, this is the town that he gives to his son-in-law. Whoever takes that town. And it was called like the holy scribes, the town of the holy scribes. The mages. They had magic books. They worshiped magic books. So what do? Is he says, hey, whoever can take over that city, he could carry on along my line. He could marry my daughter. So his son-in-law says, hey, we're not scared of a bunch of wizards. And they come in. I mean, that's really what he would have been scared of. We're not scared of wizards. You may say, oh, there are wizards. Let's not worry about that. But that's what they were standing up against. So they come in, they kick down the door, and they turn it into the town of the Word. We're going to call it the town of the Word. All good stuff. That is what, so Joshua's kids are doing not Joshua's kids. Judah's descendants are doing exactly what they're supposed to do. Does that kind of make sense? There's some warning lights because we know it's not totally great. And later on, as we hear about the kings later on, there's a lot of times where they'll talk about a king and they'll say, look at all these great things he does. He does this, he does this, he does this, he does this. But he didn't take out the high places. So in other words, we know that while he was a good king, he wasn't the Messiah. Because only the Messiah is going to be perfect. Does that make sense? Caleb was great, but he wasn't the Messiah. Caleb said, I'll give my daughter Axa to marry in marriage to the one who attacks the captures Kiriath Sefer, and Othniel, the son of Caleb's younger brother, Kenaz, He was the one that conquered it. So Asa became Othniel's wife. And Asa married Othniel. She urged him to ask her father for a field. She got down from her donkey. It shows respect. Caleb asked her, what's the matter? She said, let me have another gift. You've already given me the land of the Negev. Now please give me the springs of water too. So Caleb gave her the upper and lower springs. Now, culture. I want to say this again. I want to be an apologist for Asa. Or Aska? I don't know. I want to switch those like that. I want to make the AS before the C sound. But anyway. She is a woman of faith. She is not greedy. When we read this, this sounds to us, 21st century materialist people that we are, when we read this, it sounds like somebody who got a bowl for her wedding gift. And she said, the bowl is great, but I sure would like the bread maker. What would you think of that woman? Does that sound grateful? Does that sound materialistic and conniving? We can read her like that, but that's not what this is. Understand, when she says, give me this means give me the responsibility to take care of it. Because it's not given in any sense. She will have to take it. Imagine this. Let's say we were cleaning the church. And we said, okay, I am giving you the family room to clean up. And then the woman says, okay, I know that you've given me the family room to clean up, but can I also clean up Rick's office and Josie's office? What we think of that woman? Brave.
I was going to say a saint.
And that's exactly it. That's what we're supposed to see. She's not asking for more stuff to be given to her. She's asking for a greater responsibility to say, you know what, I want to do this. In the sense, there's nobody in the Negev. So it's easy to rule the Negev. There's no people to push out. There's nothing. It's just a big desert. It's like 5 people. You come in and say, do you like Yahweh? Yeah. Okay, we're good. We're done. She goes, give me the water places where there are people. And we'll get those places too. In a sense, it's the same kind of thing. When Caleb comes before Joshua, he says, you see that big top hill, that tall hill that has the giants on it, the fortified cities? That's the one I want to be responsible for clearing out. We look at Caleb, we're like, Caleb's a man. His daughter takes after him. So she's a powerful woman. We cheer for her. Go girl, right? And his son-in-law, which makes us feel good about Judah. And this is great because the rest of the chapter goes downhill from here quick. When the tribe of Judah left Jericho, the city of the palms, the Kenites, who were descendants of Moses. So the Kenites were the Levites that were assigned to live amongst Judah and Simeon. Traveled with them into the wilderness of Judah, and they settled among the people near the town of Arad in the Negev. Arad in the Negev. So what we're seeing is we see that the Levites that were supposed to live with Judah's tribes, did I say Joseph? Judah's tribes. The ones who are supposed to live there are doing it. So the Levites are doing what they're supposed to do in Judah. Judah is doing what they're supposed to do in Judah. Simeon's doing what it's supposed to do in Judah. That's all good. Whew. Still don't know about the toes. The toes bothers us. But so far we're like, but it looks kind of good. Then Judah joined with Simeon and fought against the Canaanites living in Zaphah, and they completely destroyed them in the town. The town there was Hormah. In addition, Judah captured the towns of Gaza, Ashkelon, Ekron, and along the surrounding territory. So what did they do? Okay. Modern day Gaza Strip. This area was given to the tribe of Dan. Dan was supposed to carry it. They looked at it and they said, too hard. And they went from there up to modern day Golan Heights. Why? Because Manasseh had already pacified the place. And they found a city that had already been pacified. They kicked it down, murdered all the people, and took it over. All the people that were already supposed to be submitting to Yahweh. Not a good thing. Dan, you're killing me. So then this area down here that they said was too hard, Judah came over here and rolled over them. Ashdod, Ashkelon, because they have the Ashtor poles. That's the gods that they're serving here. Judah took them out. Wouldn't it be great if Dan had stayed around? Because Dan could have then occupied the cities. And the problem would be gone. Judah doesn't have the people to sit in those seats. So what do? After they wipe them out, they leave. Now, historically, what happens? Well, probably the Sea Peoples. There's a lot of craziness that's happening here. We have an influx of people probably from Europe that come into this area, maybe from Asia Minor. It might be the survivors of the Trojan War. It might be the survivors of destruction, of volcanic destruction out at Minos or Crete, because there's a lot of movement that happens. What does happen is a lot of people that make pots like Greece start showing up here, and they intermarry with these people. So while I say the Philistines here, it's not the Philistines yet. The Philistine culture happens at the end of Judges, not at the beginning. The Philistine culture is a blending of those two cultures, if you're interested. I am. I think that's cool. Isn't that cool? Plus, I got to say Trojan War again. All right, so that's what's going to happen right there. The Lord said to the people of Judah that they took possession of the hill country, but they failed to drive out the people living in the plain because they had iron chariots. Oh no! So something is affecting Judah. Because everywhere else, iron chariots haven't been a problem because God is with them. So that's suggesting that some sort of that blending that was happening with the fingers and toes, there's some fruit of that. The weeds are starting to sprout. But they do pretty doggone good comparatively. The town of Hebron was given to Caleb as Moses had promised, and Caleb drove out the people living there, and the descendants of the three sons of Anak. We already saw their names earlier. The tribe of Benjamin. Now we go to that other tribe that's just north of Judah. Tribe of Benjamin, however, failed to go back to drive out the Jebusites. So even though the city was burned down, they let them come back and rebuild. More than that, they moved in among them. So to this day, the Jebusites live in Jerusalem along with the people of Benjamin. Now, this isn't diversity like good diversity. Good diversity is what we see in heaven. People of every tribe and tongue praising God. That is fantastic. This is people worshiping all these different gods in the city dedicated to one God. That's a problem. And it's there because they didn't come in and fill in, they didn't come back in. The descendants of, so again, Dan doesn't have Dan, not because of Dan, but because they don't follow into the place after Judah. Benjamin doesn't have Jerusalem not because Benjamin couldn't take it, but because they didn't take it. The descendants of Joseph, now we'll go up to Ephraim and north. Descendants of Joseph attacked Bethel. And the Lord was with them, and he sent men to scout Bethel, formerly known as Luz, and they confronted a man coming out of the town. They said, "Show us the way into town, and we'll have mercy on you." Okay, now. So they showed him the way in, and they killed everybody in the town except the man and his family. So who does that sound like? A little bit? Rahab. Sounds a little bit like Rahab, but not the important parts. The important parts of Rahab was she said, listen, your God is giving you this land. We all know it. So she recognized her God wasn't cool and great. She recognized Yahweh was cool and great. She had fear of the Lord, and it's the fear of the Lord that saved her. And because of that, she gets adopted into the Israel town, and she's worshiping Yahweh, and she's worshiping all that, and she ends up even in Jesus' genealogy. Good job. This guy is just stupid enough to get caught. It's not a decision of faith. It's not that he's fleeing because he's faithful. It's not anything like that. There's no confession of faith. So there's no changed life. They use him. It's like, we're going to give you a pile of money if you betray your city. They're like, okay. So he does. They enter into a treaty with him, and what's he do? Well, he takes it, and he goes up, and then he takes his survivors, and they go up north, and they name the city Luz. And that city still, so he goes up to the Hittite area, up to like southern Turkey, and he builds a city, or Lebanon, he builds a city, and calls it Luz. And they just sit up there, worshiping the same gods that they worshipped before. It's kind of the symbolism of the same name. Missed opportunity. It's like he came to the church pancake breakfast, he got pancakes, and then he went on his way, but he never was changed by God. The tribe of Manasseh failed it. Now we're going to see just as close as Joseph's tribe gets. It just goes downhill from there. Tribe of Manasseh failed to drive out the people living in Beth Shannon. There's that temple name again. You see that, Beth? Every time we see Beth, think house or temple and get nervous. Then Tanakh, and then Dor, and then Iliam, and then Megiddo, and then surrounding settlements. Because the Canaanites were determined to stay in the region. They said go. They said no. They said okay. When the Israelites got strong enough, they said, well, we'll send for friends. And then the friends came, and then it said, we're going to tear down your altars. They didn't do that. Instead, they said, okay, give us money. And they formed protection rackets. That's really what they did. They forced the Canaanites to work as slaves, but they didn't drive out them completely. The problem isn't the fact that they didn't do war. The problem is that they didn't crush the altars that were worshiping the other gods. So these cities, it's still devil town. And they roll in and they act like those old movies where you have like the bikers rolling into town, and they come in and they break stuff, and the town people are scared, and they give them money, and then they roll out. Israel decided that's who they said, we want to be the bikers. And that's what they do. We're going to live off of them. We're not going to convert them. We're not going to do this. Not a good thing. The tribe of Ephraim failed to drive out the Canaanites living in Gezer, and the Canaanites continue to live there. The tribe of Zebulun failed to drive out we're noticing a pattern, the residents of Kiran and Nahol, and the Canaanites were forced to work as slaves. So once they got powerful enough to drive them out, instead of driving them out, they said, it's cool. I don't care that you're going to hell. I just want to make money off of you. That's not good. Their main mission is to drive out the foreign gods and convert people to Yahweh, because they're supposed to be a nation of priests. They're not doing their job. You have one job. Tribe of Asher failed to drive out the residents of Acco and Sidon. So this is like the Phoenicians. Ahab, Elab, Asgad, Habad, all these different places. Rehab. Instead, the people of Asher moved alongside the Canaanites. They controlled the land, and they failed to drive them out. Likewise, the tribe of Naphtali failed to drive out the residents of Beth Shemesh and Beth. There's two temple names. Instead, they're like, hey, this is Devil Town. We like to be in Devil Town. Let's move into Devil Town. We'll name our kids after Devil Town gods, and we'll do all this. It's a big problem. They controlled the land. Nevertheless, the people of Beth Shemesh and Beth Anak were forced to live as slaves. So when they got powerful, they're like, just give us money and you can keep worshiping your foreign gods. Listen, sometimes the history, you've learned history wrong. Sometimes the history tells you that the good guys are the bad guys. Sometimes things that are like the Catholic Church, for example, sometimes gets it on the nose. People talk bad about the Catholic Church because of some bad things that happened in the Catholic Church, but not everything the Catholic Church did bad. Some things they did right, and some things they did right for even the right reasons. Part of Peru, the conversion of Peru, when Spain essentially conquers Peru, what they do is they go through Peru and they actually do something really good. What do? They send representatives of the government and representatives of the Catholic Church into every village. And they come in and they say, okay, what do you worship? And they say, we worship these trees over here. Or we worship these idols over here, and we worship this. The priests write it down, and then what they did is they went and they got those trees, they got those idols, they took it to the middle of town, and they burned it. And then they built a church right on top of the ashes. Say, you're not going to worship that, you're going to worship this. And now we look back and we go, oh, how bad that was, how destructive of a culture all this. Listen, what they did was take it seriously that these people were going to hell, and they said, we don't want them to go to hell. We want to... Imagine we have a radioactive water source in the middle of town, and people are dying because they're coming in and drinking that radioactive water. It would not be a thing of love to say, listen, water is water. If you want to drink that water, have at it. An act of love would be to go, come in, and cement that water source down so nobody can have access to it, and maybe plant a water purification plant right there on top of it so when people come to drink, they drink the true water. Does that make sense? That's what the Israelites are supposed to do. As a matter of fact, it happened in London, I think, in Queen Elizabeth's time. They noticed that they have balloons of typhoid, I think, I don't know, that would come up and kill a lot of people. And they recognized there was a stream going through London that people were coming and getting their water from. And Victoria, during Victoria's reign, they had a doctor and said, I think it's this water source. So what do? Is they cemented over that water source, and people were like, but people have to go miles now to get water. They can't get it from the easy one. Yeah, because the easy one was poison. I think the doctor who theorized that it was that water source even died of it because he was treating people. But they took it seriously. That's what the Israelites were supposed to do. That's the significance of renaming these cities. They're supposed to say, listen, people are going to hell we don't want them to go to hell. Even if we can make good money on them going to hell, that's not a win. A win for God is to destroy those things. So that's what we see. So we see Beth Shemesh and Beth Anan, again, temple cities. That's the people of Naphtali. Now we go up to Dan. The Danites, they drive me crazy. As for the tribe of Dan, the Amorites forced them back into the hills. So after they killed the small village, and they took it over and renamed it Dan, well, what happened is the Amorites got tough and they drove them into the city, out of the city into the hills. And they came, and they would not let them come down to the plains, and the Amorites were determined to stay at Mount Heres, Eglon, and Shalben. Okay, so these count. So this kind of sounds like hell, yes. This kind of sounds like the grave, the word grave, yes. So these mountains, they worship death deities on these mountains. So the Amorites up there worship death deities on the mountains. They kept the mountains, they kept the high places. So even though the Danites are hiding in the hills, they're not even owning the place that these other people are continuing to worship on. Not good. If only Dan had stayed where they were supposed to do, but they didn't. The descendants of Joseph became stronger. So eventually Manasseh, who's down here, gets strong enough to kick the snot out of them, but they still don't replace them. They don't tear down the gods, the death gods. They don't tear down those things. They let them keep worshiping death gods as long as they give you money. There you go. So when they became stronger, they forced the Amorites to work as slaves. The boundary of the Amorites ran from the Scorpion Pass to Sela and continued upward from there. Now we go into chapter 2. Now I said I was giving us all the clues from the narrative. Well, God doesn't want us to miss. So the angel of the Lord shows up and just says, this is what was happening. The angel of the Lord went up from Gilgal to Bochim, and he said to the Israelites, I brought you out of Egypt into this land that I swore to give your ancestors, and I said that I would never break my covenant with you. For your part, you were not to make any covenants with these people living among you. Like, were you making them their slaves, and you're letting them worship their gods in your land, and you're doing that you're not supposed to do that. Instead, you were to, what are you supposed to do? Destroy their altars. It doesn't say convert their language. It doesn't say make sure that they dress right. It doesn't say that. It says you're supposed to destroy their religion, and they did not. So that's the thing that you did. You disobeyed your command. You said, well, it's okay if they want to worship those other gods. If they're going to hell, I don't care as long as I make my money. That's why he's calling them out. He goes, so now I will declare that I will no longer drive out the people living in your land, and they will be thorns in your sides, and their gods will be a constant temptation to you. So now every story of Judges is a descent of that. So by the time we get to Samson at the very end, what's he want? He wants to have sex with Philistine women because he thinks they're hot. He wants to worship their gods. He wants to worship like them. And ultimately, he behaves as evil as they are. And he gets the thorns they get poke out his eyes. And he's a prize at the temple. So there's this thing that because they know that he falls into the temptation, he is the prime example of that failure. They will be a constant temptation to you. When the angel of the Lord finished speaking to the Israelites, the people wept loudly, and they called the place Bochim, which means weeping, and they offered sacrifices to the Lord. And now we enter back into the story of Judges. Now you know why everybody's gathered, and Joshua is 110 years, and they recommit at the end, as for me and my house. After Joshua sent the people away, so now we step back. We're like, oh, that's where we're at. So this is that 30 years. He's like, okay, you all had in charge of your own churches for 30 years. What happened? Well, Joshua did well for his part, but then he disappears. So then he passes it over to the tribes. Judah does well. Ephraim does okay. Everybody else does poorly. So then they have to restate the blessings and curses, and they go off. That's why. So Joshua sent the people away. The tribes left to take possession of their land allotted to them, and the Israelites served the Lord throughout the time of Joshua. The leaders outlived him, and they had seen all the great things that the Lord had done. This is the place where, remember, that's why you were wondering why in that we read from last week, he's like, take your idols and put them away. Joshua, son of Nun, the servant of the Lord, died at 110. They buried him in the land that had been allocated to Timnah-Serah in the hill country of Ephraim, north of Balgash. After the generation died, another generation who did not acknowledge the Lord remembered the mighty things that he had done. The Israelites did evil in the sight of the Lord, and they served those stupid idols that were supposed to put away, the images of Baal. They abandoned the Lord, the God of their ancestors who brought them out of Egypt, and went after other gods, worshiping the gods of the people around them, and they angered the Lord. They abandoned the Lord to serve Baal and the images of Ashtoreth. So what happened when they let a little sin in? We see the fruit. Dedication to Yahweh, full dedication to Yahweh is what you need to do. You can't do Jesus plus something else. It has to be Jesus, and it has to be Jesus central. And every day, it doesn't matter if your parents are faithful. I mean, it's a good thing to have your parents faithful, but you have to be faithful. Even for your kids, you have to pass it on. You have to. The responsibility of taking that role goes generationally. And the first generation that doesn't pick it up is just as fallen as anybody else. We're not good people because of who we come from or because of our genetics or because of our history. We're justified through our faith in Christ, through following Christ. Same here. And that's what we're going to see, we're going to see how easy it is to fall, how easy it is to become unfaithful, and how important it is every day to get up and choose God. Let's go, Lord, in prayer. Father God, we thank you for your word, which continues to shape and guide us. We ask that as we go forward, we can go forward like Caleb did, looking and like Aksa did, where we look at what you have, the ministry that you have for us, and say, Lord, give us the courage to expand your kingdom. Help us be agents of your grace and mercy and love in every relationship that we have. May we go out and share who you are with everybody, and may we never be comfortable with the people around us going to hell, even if it's comfortable for us, or even if it's financially advantageous for us. Lord, help us put as primary your goals and your purpose. Lord, may we always be agents of your kingdom. Lord, we thank you, we pray in Jesus' name, amen. All right, as you go out, I pray the number 6 blessing on you. I pray the Lord bless you and keep you. I pray he makes his face to shine upon you, that he's gracious to you, and that he grants you peace. Amen. All right. Exciting, right? Now you're going to notice that cycle that happens where their sin is going to destroy them. The people are going to go, oh, we hate the consequences of our sin. God save us. God's going to send somebody. Things are going to get better. And then they're going to go,